Welcome to Chatsunami. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Chatsunami. My name's Satsunami and joining me today is none other than the DM extraordinaire himself. It is Josh from the Tartan Tabletop podcast.
Hello. Thank you. That was such a wonderful introduction. DM extraordinaire.
I had to go through the list of compliments. Usually I base it on how much guests pay me on PayPal, you know?
Yeah, I'll transfer that later.
So for listeners just wondering, yes, he went for the premium package, which, comes with a couple of compliments, pepper throughout the episode. And for legal reasons, my red panda lawyer is waving me down. That is indeed a joke. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I am wonderful. This is the earliest I've been awake in a long time, and it was very, very worth it to chat to yourself. I'm currently halfway through my first coffee of the day. So if you hear me shaking and jittering and into the microphone, that's what that is.
That's just bonus ASMR content, isn't it?
You'll just notice the numbers will triple once it gets out on Reddit that I'm doing that.
Right after I do this, I'm posting it to Reddit, that's it.
New ASMR, NSFW.
Coffee time, hashtag. See if we tag Costa and Starbucks, do you think they'll get back to us and or unban us from the shop?
I think they'll get back to us only to pursue further litigation.
Probably. Costa Bucks, yeah, for legal reasons, let's just call them that.
There you are. They'll never know.
Of course, no. But Starbucks and or Costa, even Cafe Nero, if you're listening to this and you want to throw us a cheeky sponsorship, you know where we are. But my daydreams aside, I know exactly what you mean though, because I've had guests on in the past, particularly from Australia and other parts of the world, and they have had to wake up really early to get recording with me because of the pesky time zones. All I can say is, thank God we're in the same time zone. It makes a lovely change.
100%. You're sort of making me seem even lazier now that there's people getting up from Australia. I'd like to point out, I recognise that's way harder for them to get up than it is for me to get up at 15 minutes ago, 8:45. It's not hard. I'm just lazy.
I mean, to be fair, this is probably the earliest I've gotten up as well for an episode. So, I have to admit, we're both in the same boat here.
Fabulous.
As I was saying before, you're, of course, the DM and I'm assuming the head honcho of the Tartan Tabletop podcast. So before we go on, would you like to tell the lovely listeners at home what that's all about?
Yes, I like that you've called me the head honcho, but I feel like everyone else would hate that. So I'm going to start off there being like that. This is an equal 4-way partnership.
I can hear them sharpening their pitchforks on the
right,
back.
yeah, there's torches being lit. So yeah, Tartan Tabletop, we are a live play D&D. I'll go with the word experience. We are both a podcast and a live show. The live show, surprisingly, happening way more frequently than the podcast does. So you can go and listen back to some of that podcast stuff. But we do a live show now. It's pretty much every single month that we have one on, sort of from November all the way through now, I think, till December next year we have stuff booked. So yeah, it's pretty busy.
And out of curiosity, and again, I don't want this to be an interrogation to be like, how the heck did you get started in this? Because I was looking through and saw that your earliest episodes that you uploaded was 2022 for very obvious reasons. I can't imagine why you wouldn't be able to do live shows between 2020 to late 2021. But out of curiosity, how did you get into this whole thing?
So obviously with TT, there's, as I said, 4 of us. So it's myself, Alex, Lauren and Niall. I'd only really started playing TTRPGs really in the middle of COVID. It was Alex had introduced it to me. He'd been a DM for me and I had just got really obsessed with the game and rules and just everything, the kind of media around it. Obviously it was COVID at the time, so I had no job and an abundance of free time to just obsess. And sort of born via that, we were like, hey, we should do this but monetize our hobby and perform this for people and grow to hate it. No, I'm joking. But yeah, we all from a performing background as well, so it just sort of fell together quite naturally, I think.
So why did you decide that was the particular format you wanted to go, that you wanted to do it live? I know during the 2020s, and myself included, you can't see it, but I'm holding up my hands guiltily here, but loads of people started podcasts, they started streaming, they started doing YouTube channels. 2 out of 3 for me isn't bad, but they did so so many things like that. And I'm just wondering why you went for the live performance part of it, because listening to your stuff and checking out your clips from your live shows, I'm not going to pretend that I was at the back of the Fringe Theatre like last year or the year before.
What? That wasn't you?
No. That was a different Red Panda, surprisingly.
Okay.
If I had a penny for every time, etc. But yeah, what inspired you guys to go for that format in particular?
Honest answer, we're all really bad with technology to a laughable extent. So doing the podcast, I'll hold my hands up. You can go back and listen to like the first couple of episodes we did. The quality of, the story and the banter is really funny. The quality of the recording is ass. It's awful. And it's because we're really bad with that kind of thing. But what we do know quite a lot about is live performance. So we were like, this is just going to be way easier if we just do this on stage rather than the recorded version, which I think is a really roundabout way of coming into that scene. But here we are, still going.
I know, at the end of the day, that's all you can do.
Right.
How did it feel, though? See, being at the Edinburgh Fringe, and I know this is going to be the hugest plot twist of the episodes because I'm Scottish, you're Scottish.
Yep.
I know the voices have given us away, unfortunately. But how did it feel performing at the Edinburgh Fringe? Because it is a massive deal.
Yeah.
There's hundreds of tourists that flock to it. Airbnb prices shoot up and everything. Trains are absolutely sold out. You're just trying to get to Stirling and you're wedged in between two Americans. So how did that feel?
It was quite frightening at first, is what I would say. Obviously we've done, that's our third year at the Fringe we've just done. We started doing the PBH Free Fringe in 2022. And, that was the first time, not only that we were doing this show, but for me, it was the first time that sort of anything I had quote unquote written was being put on in front of an audience. So it was quite frightening. And the show has changed considerably since then. That first year we were really leaning into dramatic stuff, very Critical Role inspired. And it was good. I remember one of the shows, people were crying in the audience over a fictional bugbear, which was great. That was really nice. But I think after a while we were like, we just want to make people laugh. And so that's sort of how we were going now. In terms of how it felt after that, feels great. Laughter is great. It's immediate feedback on your work, which I think from a selfish perspective is lovely to hear.
Especially when you get people coming up to you saying, oh, I laughed at this and I laughed at that. And obviously with, as you were saying, if you're doing it live, then you get immediate feedback.
Yeah.
Which, from what it sounds like, you do get more laughter than silence, which is absolutely fantastic to hear because, I have to admit, if I ever did a live show and then someone's sitting there going, yeah, funny, I guess.
Haha.
Oh, that is the worst. I'm just thinking of the kind of pity laughter where it's like, oh, haha, that was a funny joke. And I'm like, I haven't even told the joke yet.
Literally. To be fair, I'm quite bad for someone will tell a joke and I'll say, oh, that's funny. And I do genuinely mean it's funny. I don't have laughs to give. I don't have laughs to give anymore.
Not in this economy, no.
Laughs? Listen, whoever told you laughs are cheap was lying. Laughs are fucking expensive.
This is a cost of laughing crisis here.
Literally, the laugh economy is down.
Yeah, the frowns are not upside down is what we're saying.
Yep, they're not.
Anyway, that was the very serious analytical part of this episode.
Yep, it's gone. We're through it.
That was all. But no, that's absolutely fantastic. You'll probably know this person because, let's face it, he's everywhere. But my friend and, occasional guest co-host, Martin McAllister.
Yeah, Martin.
Yeah, aye. Oh, thank God.
It'd be really awkward if I didn't, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I know. He was telling me about you guys, saying, oh, I follow this great live performing D&D podcast. And I was like, oh, sure, I'll check them out. Honestly, it's one of the best things I've done in terms of D&D because I was absolutely howling at your episodes.
Aww.
Just want to point out, I'm not just saying that because you're on, but I was listening to a couple of your episodes, and the one that, honestly, I have to catch up with the next episode, but the Help, My Teacher's a Zombie.
Oh, yeah.
That you've got going on just now. Oh my God. Not only was I cackling with laughter, but that really triggered my fight or flight response for some of the things you said. Because that way when someone says, oh, it's really authentic and things. No, what you guys were saying was scarily authentic.
Scarily real.
For the Scottish school experience.
Right.
Especially when you were talking about the mum with the cup of tea saying, oh, who are you on the phone to? Oh, no one. It's like, okay, just asking kind of thing. I was like, oh boy.
Funnily enough, that's just my mum. That's an impression of my own mother.
half of the stuff you guys were saying, it felt like a time capsule in all the right ways. It was just absolutely brilliant. And that actually brings me on to my next question, because I had to ask this. A lot of D&D podcasts and tabletop podcasts, when they do their sessions, you know, usually your critical roles and things, they'll follow a particular story from the books or, you know, a pre-made session or whatever.
Yeah.
But for you, it seems as if it's very much homebrew. I mean, to be fair, a small Scottish town, I don't think is in the D&D handbook, but...
You'd be surprised. You should look up.
All those dwarven cities down below.
Unearthed Arcana, page 70.
Yeah. But do you prefer that kind of setting?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think from a storytelling perspective, it's always better to draw from stuff that you know, right? And, you know, funnily enough, I've never fought Vecna in real life. I've never encountered a lich or anything like that, or like a dragon. So, like, a lot of the sort of elements of the pre-written stuff, I think, you know, I'm not saying they're bad stories. They're great stories and people have a lot of fun playing them, but I just can't connect with them as easily as a DM.
That's the thing. And I think, Martin, if you're listening to this, because he was my very first DM pre-COVID, I always remember I came back from university, because I used to live away from home, and then every weekend I come back and I was chatting to him, and then he turned around and he went, do you want to play D&D? And I'm not going to lie, I thought he was joking. Genuinely, at that time, D&D wasn't really as popular. I want to say it was as far back as definitely before 2015 anyway.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a while ago.
Yeah, there wasn't really that critical role aspect. It wasn't really in the mainstream, and I sound like such a bloody hipster saying that. But, you know, it wasn't that popular, so I thought, oh, you're just pulling my leg, haha, very funny, roll initiative. But no, he said, no, I played it, had a lot of fun, why don't you guys come and play it? So we got together with a group of friends, absolutely loved it, and although his was very much the fantasy setting, he made up his own places, and granted, half of them were named after whiskies.
It's cool though, that's a good way to do it.
Oh no, it was absolutely fantastic, but it's funny because as a Scotsman, you know, I'm letting the country down, I don't really drink, so I was like, oh, Talisker, Jura, those are really cool fantasy names, and then, you know, you're in the shop and you see like a whiskey named Jura or Talisker, and you're like, wait a goddamn minute.
You know, a good way I think of doing it, stuff that me and Alex have definitely employed for characters, is own brand names from Lidl of like spices.
Well, I suppose it's either that or going up, see the middle aisle of Aldi.
It's an adventure on its own.
It is, you can get lost in there, which...
Writing it down as we speak, one shot, set in the middle aisle of Aldi.
Just one more thing. God, that sounds like a Columbo spin-off, doesn't it?
I know. Just one more thing.
I'm totally with you there when you were saying about how it's more, or rather it's easier to put yourself on a setting that you can relate to. And I know not all of them are set in, you know, a sleepy Scottish town.
Yeah.
But I was listening to it, I thought, it sounds weird to say, but as a fellow Scots person, you know, it's weird to listen to something and then resonate with it so much, because I was like, oh, I recognise that reference and that reference, oh my god, and that reference, and then, you know, whether it was the house systems. Did you have those as well in school?
Yeah, we had those as well. Yeah, for me, what the kind of schoolhouses, do you mean? Yeah, we had those. Ours were just coloured, so it was like red, yellow, blue. They tried to bring in it as the Greek alphabet, but no one bothered to remember what that was, so it went back to being that.
We didn't have it in secondary school, but we had it in primary school. And let me tell you, see, as someone who went to primary school in the 90s and early 2000s, you know what else came out at the same time? Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah.
So, of course, people in the yellow house, they were the Hufflepuffs. The ones in the red, they were Gryffindor. There was such an overlap there at the time. But surprisingly, secondary school, there wasn't really much. Although I think the weirdest, you know how you got the rewards and everything, and one of them I remember was an extra playtime for about 15 minutes, but it was so awkward because you would go outside with your other housemates, as it were, running about, but all the other kids were still working.
That seems more like a punishment for them more than a reward to you.
Exactly, doesn't it? Yeah.
Well, you're up at the window, like, look how much fun I'm having. Like, why are you in there?
I don't know. I felt more like a fish in a fishbowl. I was like, ooh, look.
Look at me.
That, and I have to say, as terrible as it sounds, all of my friends were in the other houses. So it was like, I'm playing with these people that were nice at the time. But, you know, you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'll talk to you.
That's really sad. I'm not going to lie to you. That's really sad. That's quite sad. I'm sorry that happened to you.
It was the 90s. It was a different time. I know. But anyway, my trauma aside, this is the real reason I got you on for a free therapy session.
Exactly. What are DMs for?
Exactly true. Roll for crying. But going back to your performances, of course, in Edinburgh and the Fringe and everything, one that actually took me off guard, because I was looking through your Instagram page for Tartan Tabletop, and I noticed the Mary's King's Close performance.
Mary King's Close on the 5th of November. Yeah, in there. It's in there. 5th, and it's sold out. So anyone listening, I'm sorry, can't come.
And I know this is the question of the episode, how did that come about? But I'm genuinely curious, because I know you've got another one on the, I want to say 14th of December.
Correct, yeah, in the Georgian house.
I mean, how did you pull that other one?
So it's not enough for us to just do the regular. No, we want to keep it as interesting as possible, and we want to keep trying sort of new things. And so we thought, what's like a cool way of doing these shows is maybe to do them in these historical sites. Maybe do a story that's sort of set around it. In terms of how we sort of got those gigs, sheer nepotism. No, Alex knows a lot of people at sort of Mary King's Close. A lot of our friends work there, and the Georgian house, we've performed there a couple of times already. So there's just already there's a relationship there. All very wonderful people, all very happy to have us in the venue. There are still tickets for the Georgian House one, so if you want to come, anyone listening, please come along. It's going to be a D&D pantomime type thing. I haven't written it yet, so we'll see what happens.
I was going to say, as long as you don't target the audience, it'd be like you on stage, roll this dice.
Literally. Well, not yet. Not
yet. Yeah. Speaking of pantomimes, have you ever had that kind of fear when you're sitting in a pantomime and then they bring out the camera and they're like, ooh, who are we going to target? And you're like, oh no.
I think it speaks to my own arrogance that I don't feel fear. I'm excited. I'm like, pick me. I want you to pick me.
Because my partner and I went to, I think it was last year, we went to the Edinburgh one. I even remember, I think it was Peter Pan or something. I have never seen this before, because usually I'm used to them going up to the stalls and being like, oh, what's your name, blah, blah, blah. But this time they brought out a fully functional camera and they were pointing at people. Honestly, I'm a really tall guy, so the fact I just shrunk in that moment, like, and my partner's going, what's wrong? And I'm like, no, it's okay. It's like, you just keep your head up, I'm just going to slink down here. But fortunately, the lights were far too bright, so that's a tip.
There you are, hide in the shadows.
Exactly. As Batman taught us.
I heard they're not allowed to do did they ever used to do the thing when you were younger, where they'd like throw sweets into the audience, or they'd hit them with a tennis racket?
Oh, yeah.
I heard they're not allowed to do that anymore.
Are they not? Oh, man.
I don't know if someone got blinded or something and now they can't do it, but, I'm not going until they bring it back.
Back in our day, we had real pantomimes.
Boycott the panto.
See, to be honest, it's one of those things that I think, surely not, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was. I don't know. Is it just a thing that the older you get, don't get me wrong, you still get enjoyment out of it, but the older you get, you look at pantomimes and you think, wow, this is for kids.
It's almost as if we aren't the target audience anymore.
I know, surprisingly.
Sometimes things just aren't for you.
I know.
And that's wrong and shouldn't be.
Exactly. That's the message. Anyway, thank you for listening to... No, I'm kidding. I mean, it's always funny though, right enough at the end when they bring up the kids and they get them to try and tell a joke. And I'm pretty sure in the last one that I was at, the kids just didn't want to say a joke. Nice. They just wanted to walk off with a prize.
I've did pantomime before. I've been on a panto. It was an experience. I did like a touring one for schools.
Oh.
You know those sort of ones? You know the ones that they turn up? I did one of those. One of the schools we went to, it was like a primary school. I remember this very vividly. The stage was floor level. Like there wasn't a stage. It was just we were on the floor with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the villain. I was the sort of crotchety mayor of the town. And I come out and I do my big villain monologue at the beginning, like, oh, I'm such an evil man, that sort of thing. And this kid up the back, really tall. This is like primary 2 or 3. This kid's like my height. And I'm like tall. I'm like 6'1". This kid's like really tall. Just starts gunning it down the middle aisle. Power walking towards me. But like no one's stopping him. Like no one is stopping this kid. I'm like, man, he's going to beat me up. I'm going to get beaten up by a child live on stage. And he just came and gave me a big hug, and it was really nice.
Aww.
That was really nice. I think he thought I was evil and going to destroy the town because of a lack of friendship. So learn that lesson, kids.
I was going to say, that is a completely different experience from the Glasgow ones.
Right. This was in like Luton.
Well, you know what? Shout out to Luton for that one. I have to say, I can't imagine many pantomimes where the kids are like, if he just needs a hug.
I can't imagine many shows where the kids are like, I'm just going to get up and go on stage.
Got to respect the hustle, I suppose. But I take it you've never had that, though, for Tartan Tabletop. No heckling. I mean, hopefully to God you haven't, but no heckling or people yelling out or anything.
We've been sort of okay. Because of the nature of the show, we don't hugely mind, like, people shouting out every now and then. That's not an invitation to anyone listening, but it's not, like, I will typically engage with it if it's not horribly insulting. We've had people playing music before, which was really weird. I think it was like a sort of, we were entering like a tense moment, and they took it upon themselves to DJ that, which don't do that. That was kind of odd. And it was also very confusing. We did a run in Australia as well. We did the Adelaide Fringe. We had a show there, and bless her heart, there was a girl in the audience with Tourette's, and she was really lovely, and ended up, she just became a part of the show. Tics and stuff, she couldn't help it. But yeah, that was interesting, but it was a lot of fun, and they were a good sport as well. So
would you say there was any difference, though, obviously other than that, but do you say there was any difference between the audience and that particular fringe as opposed to the Edinburgh one?
Over in Adelaide, the audience, I guess, yeah, I think it was like a completely different atmosphere in general for the festival. The actual scale difference is crazy. Edinburgh is obviously the biggest one, but it's like way bigger. But I think overall, the sort of sense of humour, and I think the sensibilities between Scottish people and Australians are fairly similar to a degree. I think they were a little less rowdy than they are in Edinburgh. They were a little more contained, I'll say.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I have to say, and again, no offence to the fringe goers of Edinburgh listening here, but I have been there during the fringe, not obviously performing, partly because they won't return my calls, but that's another story. Again, for legal reasons, that's a joke. But yeah, half of the time when you go to Edinburgh at the best of times, it's really busy. You know, you've got tourists all year round. You've got just people trying to weave in and out of said tourists. But at the same time, when you go to the fringe, and oh my God, see when you get the train into Edinburgh on Fringe Day.
It's horrible.
It is like sardines in a can.
Yeah.
And I mean, especially if you're travelling from Glasgow to Edinburgh, it's 45 minutes of just
hell.
Pretty much. Although I have to admit, it is quite fun listening out to the different accents, because you're like, oh, there's a Canadian person, there's an American, and this and that, and you can tell they're going to the fringe because they're all dressed up and whatnot. But
yeah, of course.
But you need a riot shield, don't you?
Oh,
like,
100%. Yeah, 100%. My dream is that Tartan Tabletop will get so big that I can take a helicopter. That's what I hope for. I don't think we're going to get there anytime soon, but can always shoot for the stars.
I also remember that poster from school.
Shoot for the moon. If you miss, you'll land in the stars.
You know what the bitter irony was? That was hung up in our maths department, and I have to say, I was terrible at maths. It didn't help.
They're landing somewhere in and around the atmosphere.
Just drifting listlessly.
Literally.
Out of curiosity, where would your dream venue be to perform?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really, really good question. The sold out living room of my high school bully. No. I think, I don't know, because every time we do a new venue, I'm like, this is surreal. When are people going to find out that I have a real sort of, not an imposter syndrome with the shows, but like, you know what I mean? We're going to get found out. We're just four friends that are just going up and playing a game. Oh no, I've outed myself live on a podcast. I think my dream venue, the bigger the better, I think. I don't know, Madison Square Gardens. Let's go with that. Let's go with that one. I'm being very uncreative.
You know, I thought you were going to say Edinburgh Castle, but I'll take it.
Oh, no, that one. That's a good one. Edinburgh Castle would be great. That'd be really good.
I was going to say, well, if worst comes to the worst, there's always Stirling Castle.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, Edinburgh Castle's little brother.
Yeah. Brother on another hill.
Yep.
Pain in the backside to get up to, but I know why.
Well, that's sort of the point.
Yeah, exactly. I remember I saw a tweet from someone the other day saying, oh, I'm going to Edinburgh and I'm really not looking forward to all the hills and the stairs. And I was like, well, the stairs, you can get around, but nah, the hills are there to stay. It's a very hilly city, isn't it?
It's an extremely hilly city. It's a city built on top of a city. That's what I learned recently going on my first ever tour of Mary King's Close.
Well, would you believe the first time I went was last year as well? So yeah, you're amongst good company here.
Oh, fantastic.
It's an interesting tour though.
Oh, it's great. My tour guide was fantastic. It's Alex that also does Tartan Tabletop was doing my tour.
Yeah, no, it's an absolutely fantastic tour. And again, for legal reasons, this isn't sponsored by Mary King's Close or anything, but it's such a weird one because you have to book ahead of time to actually get there, because we had one of those moments where we had our tickets and everything, but then the couple behind us went up and they said, oh, can we get tickets for today? And they're like, nah, sorry. They were more polite than that, mind you, but they're like, nah, sorry, you have to book ahead. So it's just so popular. And of course, the further down you descend, it gets absolutely Baltic, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's cold, it's creepy too. Really scary.
I mean, for obvious reasons, it's cold and creepy.
Well, yeah.
It's a city under a city, as you said.
Yeah.
I have to say, the one weird room I noticed, did you get to see this? It was the room with the really dodgy paint on it.
Was it the poison paint?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah, that was really weird.
Yeah, but they just swung the door open and then they're like, oh, here's poisonous paint. And it's like, why are you opening this door?
Yeah, don't go. I just wafting it everywhere, right? For those that haven't been, there's a room full of dolls that's supposedly haunted. That was frightening. I poked my head in. I was like, I'm not going in there. I have a real day-to-day worry that I'm accidentally going to get myself cursed in some way, shape or form. I'm going to, maybe go into one of these rooms and disturb the peace, and then a ghost is going to curse me. So that's a fear that I have.
You're going to be in your own live-action version of Scooby-Doo. Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. I've been compared to a Great Dane often in my life.
Yeah, I'm going to move on from that comment. No, that room is, I'm totally with you there, that room is absolutely freaky as hell. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but was it not that it was something to do with somebody left the doll for what they thought was the ghost of a child there, but then somebody stole that original doll?
Yeah, it was like a famous medium came and did, I don't know, like sort of going around the rooms to try and detect spirits, and supposedly detected one in that room, and yeah, the doll was left, but then it got stolen. And so people now come in and leave dolls and stuff for the ghost.
Yeah, I found that quite weird when you're looking at all these different dolls from different time periods.
Yeah, it's creepy.
Some are really old, and then you see, I don't know, something from Cartoon Network or
literally,
something
from like last year.
I didn't know they were into contemporary media. Just the ghost picking it up going, what the hell's this?
Literally. I don't know what this is.
Have you ever done the ghost tour?
I haven't. Is that the one with the bus?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't either, but I've seen the bus going around. It's like a big black bus. It's like a double-decker one, and you walk by it. After that, I was laughing because compared to if you go to a city like Glasgow where they've got the big red double-decker bus and it's one for afternoon tea, which I think is one of the worst ideas ever.
Right? Imagine being the server on that.
Imagine having afternoon tea in the middle of Glasgow and, the potholes everywhere. You're holding onto your tea going, this is a lovely experience, isn't it? It's like, no.
If you look to your left, you'll see Mary Hill.
If you look to your right, the Barrowland.
Cool.
So what I'm trying to ask is, you've never thought about doing a D&D session on a bus?
Not until right now. So every venture is different, right? Every time we do a show, it's a completely different story, and we try to sort of theme it around where we are performing. So if we did it on a bus, I guess I'd need to do like Transformers maybe.
I thought you were going to say Speed or something.
Oh, I'm going to steal that.
Go for it.
Now all we need to do is find a bus. It's crazy.
I'm sure there's plenty of them to hire out, but then again, I'm saying that as if I know that for a fact.
Right? Have you looked this up before?
Well, I know you get the party buses, but I don't think that would really have the same vibe, would it?
Same vibe or capacity.
Can you imagine being the bus driver for that? It's like, oh, where do you want to go? You going to a party or something? Nah, we're good here. Just playing D&D.
Just park up somewhere, buddy.
I mean, you could have people creepily breathing in the windows. I mean, like, oh, you playing D&D?
I don't think I'd want that.
Just drive.
Please get out of here.
But go back to the other bus.
Yes.
I haven't been on it either. I've heard good things about it, but again, I feel as if driving in Edinburgh at night, driving in Edinburgh any time of the day, that gives me nightmares.
I don't drive. I've never learned to drive, so I've avoided that terror that you're describing.
I've only driven twice in Edinburgh, and I always remember my dad saying this to me. He said, ever since the trams came in, he absolutely hates driving in Edinburgh. So, of course, me being the son, as it were, being like, oh, Dad, you're, exaggerating and everything. I've been twice, and I've never found religion so fast in my life while driving in Edinburgh. Honestly, when you're on the tracks and you're like, should I be here? Should I not be here? And obviously, I need to be there to turn round, but I'm looking in my rear view mirror as if a tram comes up behind, then that's it. It's game over.
It's done, but it's lights out.
I've not had any messages from the Edinburgh Council to say you drove like an idiot, part and parcel, but
they're compiling them. They're compiling them into a file so they can easily send it as one
big message.
Yeah, one big massive fine.
It's like if I go to the Fringe next year, I'll book myself onto a show and they'll just be like, yeah, no, there's no show. Here's your tickets.
They're like that movie Trap.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. It was, do you know what? I actually, from an entertainment perspective, I enjoyed it. I was like, this is fun. It's an interesting film. I'm not going to say it's going to win an Oscar, but it was, it was okay.
The first half was all right, but then avoiding spoilers here, but after the concert and everything, you're like,
yeah, kind of jumped the shark a little bit on that to an extent, if you can say that about a film with the subject matter that it has.
The whole trailer focuses on the concert bit, and that is the best part of the film.
Yeah, 100%.
Then you get to the next bit where it's like he's a shapeshifter and everything. That's not a spoiler. He's not a literal shapeshifter, but yeah, I remember sitting in the cinema being like, oh, this is a great movie so far. I don't know why people are, complaining about it, and then 2 seconds later you're like, oh.
Yeah, it's fell off a little bit, M. Night. It's fell off. Josh Hartnett, though, he is on the rise. His star is once again rising. You heard it here first.
Well, that is true, though. When you keep seeing them in the same films, you're like, oh.
Yeah, 100%.
That's going to be you and you guys one day, right enough, in the tabletop community, where it's like, oh, it's these guys again.
Yeah, these guys, Tartan Tabletop really fell off with that last one. The first half was great. Second half, not so much.
Yeah, ever since they took it onto that bus, they've not been the same. It was a life-changing experience for them.
The first half of the bus journey was good, and then the DM got really travel sick, and the second half wasn't as good.
But speaking of other than difficulties riding a double-decker bus, what kind of difficulties have you found with the podcast and recording live shows and recording the podcast itself? Because I can't imagine, and this is coming from someone who also has his fair share of mishaps recording podcasts, but I can't imagine, it goes flawlessly.
Yeah, so the recording the podcast, really the main enemy of that, which is the main enemy of D&D as well, is just scheduling. It's just finding the time to do it. Recently, we've been doing we'll take a full day off and try and do 2 or 3 episodes in that one day, which is really tiring. And sort of by the end of it, you're like, man, I don't know if that was, the best output we could have done. We're really tired. So, it's sort of balancing that. Okay, maybe we'll do 2 sessions this day. Maybe we'll do 1 this other day, because we all work full time as well on top of doing all of this. So yeah, it's been really difficult. Other than that though, technically speaking, we work in a studio now, which is nice. And so, most of that hasn't been a huge problem. We've had to learn to edit, which has been a fun experience. But no, the live shows, the only real sort of bit of troubleshooting we ever had to do was time. How do you cut a story down to, it's often an hour or an hour and a half slot that we get given, and we don't really want to do any longer than that. So it's working out how to make a full story but have it be concise. And I'm not going to tell you how, because that's the secret sauce, and you got to work that out for yourself.
Yeah, I can totally sympathise on the editing front, because other than this podcast, of course, which is honestly, it's an absolute delight to record, but see, to edit it and put it together, take away all of my repetitive ums and likes and ahs and things like that. Oh my god, it is the absolute worst. But I remember, ironically enough, it was again with Martin McAllister, my friend Andrew, and another good friend who goes by the name Robotic Battle Toaster. He's a Twitch streamer. I just want to say he's a Twitch streamer.
I think I've heard of him actually.
You've probably seen him floating around.
Most likely.
But all of them are absolutely lovely guys, and we did an attempt for a tabletop podcast called Stop, Drop and Roll Initiative, and my co-host would absolutely kick me in the backside if I didn't bring us up, but we started it, just kind of casually, and then because of trying to get the right time for us all to meet up and everything, that was a struggle. And because I'm so consumed, as it were, with Chatsunami, I was like, I can't really help as much with the editing. So my friend Andrew was like, oh, it's fine, I'll edit it and everything. This isn't a call out to him, but only 2.5 episodes have been edited so far.
It's hard, it's tough.
Oh, aye. And I mean, especially since there's 4 of us, and I'm assuming it's the same for yourselves, that because there's so many people that you have to juggle the audio tracks and everything. Do you feel as if the more people you have on an episode or for a session, the more difficult it is to edit it all together?
Yeah, I think on top of it being difficult to edit, I think the more people you have as well, just the more likely you are to have things to edit out, right? Like mistakes or like people talking over each other or things like that. Sorry, I'm just like having pure flashbacks here to edit. I don't do as much of the editing anymore, which is nice. Yeah, it's tough.
I honestly think I've got Stockholm Syndrome at this point, because I've had friends who have said, oh, I'll help you edit it. And then I think, well, on the one hand, that would make my life a whole lot easier. But on the other hand, I've gotten so used to editing it in a particular way, because one of my friends, I remember years ago when I started the podcast, said, oh, it's okay, just leave a couple of likes, a couple of breathy noises just to make it sound natural and everything. Long story short, we're not friends anymore. I listen back to the early episodes and I cringe with myself. I'm like, how did I let myself have that pause there, have that breathy noise? No one wants to hear breathy noises on a podcast. No one wants to hear ums and likes. The occasional one, sure, but it was the absolute worst. And ironically enough, and I think I actually said this to you when I was reaching out to you to come onto this episode, that Martin and I, our first episode together was actually the very first episode of Chatsunami.
Oh, wow.
And it was all about D&D. It was all about our experiences together. And fortunately, we redid the episode 2 seasons later. But I feel as if the first season, and I'm assuming as well that this is the same with you guys for your earlier episodes, that it's like a learning curve that you get better and better.
Yeah, 100%.
Peeking behind the curtain here for a bit, but for the first season, the majority of them were done over Discord, because it was streamed live at the time, which probably didn't help. And I got the audio off of that. It was all mushed together. It wasn't the best quality and everything. So by season 2, I ended up finding Zencastr. And again, it's not a shout out, but it is great when it works and everything. But it's just trying to find that balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
The joys of editing.
Thinking back, because I did our very, very first episode, and I think it took me like at least 12 hours, and like it doesn't sound good, but even just to make it coherent and work and put it all together and patchwork, it was tough. Foolishly, we started researching how to make a podcast after we'd recorded the first one, and there was some basic things that we hadn't been doing that kind of made life easier. Like that first episode, we were all in the same room during it, but like not in a studio. There's no mixer or anything, so it's like we are in my living room, and so everybody's mic is picking up everyone else's, everyone else's voice, and there's no mixer to cut any of that out. So it was like, yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare.
The amount of times that I've done episodes in the same room as someone, and once again completely sympathise. There was an episode I did with someone, and for some reason, this was before I got the XLR mics, and we both had condenser mics, and they were both USB ones, and for some reason we managed to get it to work. The first time we did it, it was perfectly fine. It wasn't the best quality, but it picked it up all right. But then the other 2 times we did it, it was really echoey and just really bad quality, and I was having a meltdown when I was editing it, because I'm like, oh, the quality's the worst. It's terrible. Have you ever had an episode like that where, and obviously not because of the quality, but because of the audio, or something's just not clicked, that you've thought, I'm not sure whether I want to put it out?
Yeah, we have hidden episodes. We have whole story arcs. This is a deep cut right now. We have whole story arcs that just haven't went out. They're just sitting on a hard drive. Maybe one day they will be released, but through different reasons, through technical issues, there's a few of them. I think there's like 3 of them, or like a few of them where we're like, you know what, maybe we don't want to put that story out right now. Maybe this is like one for later on, so it might just be hidden forever. So that's part of the TT lore right there.
I'm the absolute same though, because there's a couple of episodes that I haven't released in the early days. I mean, I remember recording a full episode of, you know, the film Perfect Blue. Have you ever seen that?
I have not. What is that?
I mean, it's a good film, but God, is it heavy. It's like, you know the film Black Swan?
Yes.
It's like the anime version of that.
Okay.
Although I think Perfect Blue came first, but that's a whole other thing.
Yep.
I'm just saying that in case there's weeps in the audience. But my friend Andrew and I, we did an episode on it, and I remember his audio quality was quite bad at the time. And we did a whole episode, and I remember listening back, and my audio was okay, not to pat myself on the back, but mine was okay, but his just sounded like he was at the bottom of a Pringles can. So I was like, yeah, I can't put it out because I couldn't salvage his audio. So we had to re-record it, and don't get me wrong, it was a brilliant episode. It's one of our best ones, but there have been a few, I have to say. There was a guy who I remember interviewing in season 1, and he was a streamer that I knew, and he was like, oh, by the way, just to let you know, after we recorded the episode, I'm going away in a hiatus, so you might want to hold off on releasing it. So I was like, yeah, no problem. And then, long story short, it never got released because I kept pushing it back, and
wow.
Now I feel as if I've kind of gone over the Rubicon of quality.
Right, yeah.
It's so far back that it's just such a different style and everything. And
you got to do is you've got to wait like 5 years from now and then release it as pay-per-view on like a Patreon.
Well, I've always been tempted to, but then I think, what's someone paying £1 a month going to think when they listen to it and go, that's what I'm paying for?
Well, you need 1,000 people paying 50 pence, and then you need that's like £500. I think I also was bad at maths.
As I said before, you're amongst good company here. I mean, that is the thing though, isn't it, with content creation? It's like on the one hand you kind of think, oh, I don't know if, you know, it's good enough to go out, but then on the other hand you think, well, it would make good bonus content.
Yeah, 100%. I think as a creator, it's always good to be able to quote unquote sort of kill your babies, you know what I mean? You know, there's nothing wrong with looking at something you've made and being like, actually, you know, I can do better, or maybe actually this wasn't a great idea. I think that it's definitely a hard thing to do, you know, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's just take it as practice, is what I say.
And would you say that your show, and I suppose yourself as a content creator, has grown over the years doing this?
Oh, 1,000%. It's completely different from what we used to do. You know, it's still always evolving. Obviously, before, as I'd said, we were quite dramatic, and now we're leaning very into like really silly, funny, going for laughs. Even the podcast, the way it's structured is a lot different now. So before we were doing, and you can go back and watch our sort of first season, or listen to, sorry, our first season, The Lonely Cosmos, which is sort of longer arching. I think there's like 12 or 13 episodes. It's a comedy, but there is like dramatic elements to it, and it's, you know, a little bit more of a, I don't want to say a fleshed out story, like we don't do that in the other ones, but it's, you know, there's peaks and valleys in it, whereas we're sort of moving now towards doing shorter seasons, like 3-episode one-shots that maybe are just a little bit more entertainment value, like fun, silly, something you can put on and just have a good time kind of thing.
Because I have to say, with shows like Critical Role and, you know, all the giants that just one day appeared out of nowhere, it is quite difficult to get into them, because I've had people recommending them for obvious reasons to be like, oh, Critical Role, and oh, this show, that show, oh, they're absolutely fantastic. And you go to listen to them and you're like, how many episodes are there?
Yeah.
Especially because it's not like Chatsunami where you can jump in at any moment, and this isn't me patting myself on the back here, but it's not like that. Or even with your show, as you said, although it's a longer season, at least 12 or so episodes, that's not a huge mountain.
Yeah, it's manageable.
Yeah, whereas for something like Critical Role, it's like hundreds and hundreds of episodes, and you've got people diving into the deep ritual lore and the characters, and you're like, well, you know, I don't know if I want to commit that time to it. And I know that sounds so lazy as someone who binges Netflix shows.
No, 100%. I think for me, I want to make things that I would listen to or watch. And that's not like a quality thing. That's like I'm lazy. I don't have a long attention span. So I think that, yeah, I can't commit to watching like 100 or so episodes that are all 4 hours or so. And some people really like that. And that's, you know, that's great. For me, growing up watching things, coming home from school, like watching The Simpsons, watching Futurama, that's like, I'm just jumping into like a quick 20-minute episode. Do you know what I mean? I'm enjoying enjoying it and then I'm parting ways with it.
My partner and I have just started watching absolutely terrible for catching up on popular shows that have already been and gone, you know, like Breaking Bad and things like that. It's like, oh yeah, I've watched this cool show. What is it? Breaking Bad? It's like, oh, like years ago. But one of the shows we've been watching recently is that Only Murders in the Building.
Oh.
Again, it's podcasters podcasting in the building, and as a podcaster, you kind of look at it and go, okay, what are they saying about podcasters? But I was shocked when I realised that the episodes were around roughly 30 minutes or just over. That is such a novelty. It's really old and weird as that sounds. The fact that whenever you go into Netflix and it's like, oh, we've got this brand new show, here's an hour-long beginning episode, and you think, oh, right, maybe the pilot or the first episode, that's only an hour, but the other episodes are going to be shorter, and no, they're all hour-long episodes. So
57-minute episode. I think as a writer, honestly, I think it's harder to write shorter. I feel like indicatively you're like, oh, you know, a longer episode, it would take longer to write, but I think it's harder to condense down what you're trying to do in 30 minutes.
Because have you ever had to do that, though, for the shorter episodes? Just say, all right, this has to go, that has to go, or do you save it for another time?
It's sort of strange because obviously we're like, although I write things, I obviously write the sort of the DMing elements of it, but it is, you know, for the majority and the most part, entirely improvised. But from the cast, at least, that it's entirely improvised by them. So yeah, a lot of stuff I write down does end up going out of the window entirely, which is just the nature of D&D. Like if I write something down and I'm like, yeah, this is going to be a great plot point, and they just don't engage with it at all, then that's immediate feedback to me that maybe this wasn't a great plot point. You know what I mean?
Are you one of those DMs, though, that writes extensive notes, or do you just write kind of bullet points and say, oh, this happens, that happens, and then let the players do their own thing?
I write extensive notes, but not like in the way that I feel other people do it. My notes almost look, the closest thing I compare it to is, I don't know, like computer coding. My notes are very much like brackets. If this happens, this happens. If this happens, they do this. If this happens, and they'll be like, for every eventuality, I try to be like, perhaps this happens. You can't cover everything, but I'm very pernickety about trying to second guess my players.
It actually reminds me of, again, going back to the first campaign I ever played with Martin McAllister, and I always remember vividly that at the very beginning he said he used to take really, really detailed notes and everything, and then, of course, things wouldn't work out the way he expected, which, you know, that is really part and parcel for the D&D. Yeah, but I remember there was one where he was telling me this actually on an episode, and I couldn't believe it when he was telling me, but I played a gnome bard called Blimbro, and I was like, oh, right, we're going to go into this tavern and everything, and long story short, I ended up getting into a arm wrestle with I say arm wrestle, it was a mage hand arm wrestle with this other bard, and we needed information, so I bet behind my teammates' backs that if we won, then we would get the information, but if we lost, then we would have to give up my team member's pet alligator. Trust me, it made sense in context. Before that, we'd been getting chased by a dragon, so there was a dragon, you know, floating outside.
Of course.
And I was like, oh, you know what? Spoilers, but I lost the arm wrestle. And he was like, right, where's this pet alligator? And I said, oh, he's outside. So as soon as he went outside, I bolted the door shut.
Nice.
And then I had to cover my crimes the next morning in the game. But I was talking to him about that particular moment, and they said, yeah, I didn't have any extensive notes on that. So I was like, well, what did you write? And they said, well, all I wrote was the team get into an arm wrestle with another bard or something. Yeah, it's just amazing how, you know, if you let your players, I don't want to say it off the lead as it were, to go, oh, yeah, do anything, but to at least express themselves through their characters. It's amazing what you can get out of it.
Oh, 1,000%. I think you need to trust your players, but I think as a DM, you need to trust yourself as well. I think the extensive note-taking can often come from, if I don't have these notes, no one's going to have fun and they're all going to hate me as a DM. You don't have to do that. I think the only thing required to be a good dungeon master is just to agree to be the dungeon master. No one wants to do it, really, other than us that love, kind of, you know, us with glutton for punishment sort of thing. But yeah, don't stress is what I would say to anyone listening that wants to DM. Just go for it, you know. What can go wrong?
Everything. Nah, I'm only kidding. See, in terms of people who want to get into D&D, because I can imagine if someone's at the Fringe or one of your other amazing shows and they want to get into D&D, they're kind of not sure about it.
Yeah.
Have there been any, for yourself in particular, because obviously I'm not saying you had any bad experiences with the Tartan Tabletop, Tabletop. All of the sessions seem absolutely fantastic when I listen back to them. But have you yourself had any bad experiences with D&D?
Yes, I have. I'm not going to obviously name names or anything like that, but I have DM'd for people sort of outside of my friend group before, and just like kind of randomly kind of people trying to get into it, like work colleagues, things like that. I've never had like a horribly bad experience, home crying, that was awful sort of thing. But I think certain people have different expectations of the game. It is worthwhile chatting about that first. I've had experiences where the players just don't want to become an adventuring party. Like, it's that sort of thing. Is like, you meet in a tavern, why should we team up? And it's sort of like, well, because we're all here playing the game. It's not my job to, not really to make you want to go on the adventure, right? You know what I mean?
The only other time I've played a campaign out with my friend group, and this is something that I've always thought, that if you're not playing with friends or people you're familiar with, it can be so much harder to actually get into D&D, especially, God, this is a flashback, but again, pre-COVID, one of my friends was roped into going to, and I use this phrase so loosely, a starter session in a comic shop. Long story short, it wasn't a starter session, it was just a, they hire out the tables and they say, oh, that'll be £3, which took me by surprise. I was like, oh God, okay. So when we went there, long story short, we didn't even get our own table. We just got thrown into somebody else's campaign halfway through.
Oh.
The DM and the other characters were really hostile, or not hostile, but just very dismissive. If like my friend and I suggested to do something, they would dismiss it because we weren't members of the party, both literally and outside of the thing. It was absolutely terrible because it was so bad that it was one of the first solo Chatsu Shorts episodes that I did, just complaining about it.
Fair enough.
It was so bad. It was, when you get a player who wants to be the class clown,
yes,
but they're not funny.
I know exactly what you mean.
We went into a dungeon and the dungeon master was complaining that people don't draw their own maps and things while they're talking, and I'm like, okay, that's a bit weird.
Who has time for that, right?
But then the other guy who was the ranger, he went into a room where he had to reach out for a ruby, and he kept setting off a trap and he kept getting killed over and over again, and it wasn't funny. That way, like the first couple of times you're like, oh, ha ha ha. But as we were saying, the forced laughter, eventually you're just like, oh Jesus, how do I get a refund?
Right. Yeah. There's nothing that strikes fear into my heart more than the phrase, it's what my character would do.
Oh, yeah, there was certainly a lot of them at that table. But that's the thing, though. Other than that, very traumatic experience, but I feel as if that is a big deal breaker for a lot of people wanting to get into D&D, because as you said, it's very subjective, isn't it? And if you get a moment like that, then you're just going to hate the game, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%. I think, if you're out there listening and you want to start playing D&D, I think that, don't be put off, obviously. We've said, you should play with friends. If you don't have friends that can play it, there is a lot of good tables out there, but yeah, there's definitely some real bad ones, and it's okay to leave a table if you're there and you're like, I feel uncomfortable and this sucks.
Because I suppose it goes back to the common phrase of no D&D is better than bad D&D, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I would say so. Bad D&D is, funnily enough, bad.
It's as you said, though, it's like you get people who, even amongst your friend groups, you get people who are wanting to play D&D and get something different from it. For example, I'm not massively into the combat. Like, I'll do it and everything, but I prefer more the roleplay element of, just having a good time, having to get serious when I need to and such. Whereas I've played with other players who, although they do want to roleplay, they still prefer the combat mechanics. They want to be the big badass and everything. And it is just such a subjective game to get right. So, yeah, as you said, it's like, as long as you're really getting what you want out the experience, I honestly can't imagine just, sitting for a whole campaign and then just being like, yeah, that was all right.
Right, like that's a lot of time sink for something you're not really, really into.
And I mean, especially nowadays that D&D is that topic that it's just so, again, not to sound like a hipster from before, but the fact it's so mainstream now as opposed to what it used to be. Do you remember that growing up, that D&D was that kind of ostracised hobby?
I don't. So my only experience with D&D as a kid was I bought a D&D sort of starter set from from a charity shop somewhere. I don't remember what edition it was. It was maybe 3.5 or it was maybe even AD&D. I don't know. But I had no idea what it was or how to play it. So I just sort of made up the rules and how the game worked, which is almost how Gary Gygax probably intended. But we just made it up. But other than that, my experience of it was very limited. I didn't know anyone that played it. It wasn't, where I grew up, it wasn't like something that was often spoken about. And yeah, it's just I had no exposure to that media.
It's not like kids were hunting other kids playing D&D or something. Again, the punishment was that the D&D kids had to go outside and play for primary school for playtime. But it did seem as if whenever it came up, it was very much in the same circles of like Star Trek and for some reason pocket calculators, which I think is more an American thing because it was the only time I ever saw it. Yeah. Yeah, I never saw it in real life. So yeah, those kind of geeky stereotypes. And now it's absolutely fantastic that it's getting more popular, especially with the movie.
Yeah, 1000%.
Yeah, I was going to ask, have you seen the film?
I've seen it a couple of times. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun.
Martin McAllister and I reviewed it, and I have to say, I was shocked at how good it was.
Yeah, 100%.
I genuinely thought, it's going to be like the old one, or from what I've seen of the old one, it took itself... It almost kind of reminds me about what you were saying, that the first one, it took itself way too seriously. Mm-hmm. And, there was the high stakes and everything, whereas this one, although there were high stakes, there was a lot more comedy in there. And although there was a serious story, at least there was that humour and levity.
I think that's the sort of juxtaposition between what people that don't play D&D think it is compared to what it actually is. I think if you were to ask a sort of random person that's never played, to describe it, it would be very serious, and it's like good versus evil and like knights and sorcerers, which there are elements of, but there's also the very human element of, I'm going to call this goblin Noblin the Goblin, and all of them are going to take him as a pet, and it just becomes very silly because it is just you and your friends having a good time.
And at the end of the day, that's all you really want, isn't it? You just want to have a good time with 100%. Fellow adventurers, goblins.
That's it.
But as a final question, though, and this is something that we mentioned before, but what's coming up for Tartan Tabletop in the future? What have you got planned? What is the juicy goss for your show? Because as you said, you've got the one coming up in November, you've also got the one coming up in December, but what's next?
Yes, we have lots and lots and lots coming up. So we have November, December this year. Still some tickets left for December at the Georgian House, so grab them while you can. I think there's like 15 left at this point, maybe even less depending on when this releases. Into the new year, we are chock-a-block. Stuff will be getting announced, tickets will be going live. We're doing a lot of projects with a company called Rollware, who are Glasgow-based, who basically run sessions for people to come in and play D&D. It's a project that we call Live Play and Play Live, where with your ticket price, we do a live show. You come and watch the live show, get plenty of yucks, and then afterwards you can sit with your friends at a table and play D&D for yourself with some professional DMs there to guide your way. We will be doing the Edinburgh Fringe again, most likely, and we're going to be doing a lot of gigs between Glasgow, Edinburgh, possibly down in Manchester, all over the UK, all to be announced when I decide to make the ticket links.
And honestly, that sounds absolutely fantastic. Josh, thank you so much once again for coming on Chatsunami and talking about all things D&D.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, before we wrap up, where can these lovely listeners at home find your content?
So you can find our content on any platform you listen to podcasts, so YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, any others that I haven't mentioned. We're on all of them. We are Tartan Tabletop on all of them. We're also on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook at Tartan Tabletop, so you can find us there. And we're also on TikTok because we're down with the kids. So if you want to see my face doing a TikTok dance trend, we're at Tartan Tabletop. You can find it there.
Well, all I can say is you're a braver person than me, so thank you. Thank you for your sacrifice. Now we can definitely go check out Tartan Tabletop because, as I said, and I'm not just saying that, it was an absolute laugh listening to these episodes. So, as I said, go check it out. But if you would like to check out more episodes from ourselves at Chatsunami, then you can check us out on our website, chatsunami.com, as well as all good podcast apps. I also want to thank our Pandalorian patrons, Robotic Battle Toaster, Sonia and Ghostie. Thank you so much for supporting the show. And if you would like early access, exclusive episodes, some apparently saucy coffee ASMR content for the low price of £100 a month. No, I'm looking. Then you can indeed catch us on the Patreon, patreon.com/Chatsunami. Until next time, thank you all so much for listening. Stay safe, stay awesome, and most importantly, stay hydrated. Welcome to Chatsunami, a variety podcast that discusses topics from gaming and films to anime and general interests.
Previously on Chatsunami, we've analysed what makes a good horror game, conducted a retrospective on Pierce Brosnan's run as James Bond, and listened to us take deep dives into both the Sonic and Halo franchises.
Also, if you're an anime fan, then don't forget to check us out on our sub-series, Chatsunami, where we dive into the world of anime. So far, we've reviewed things like Death Note, Princess Mononoke, and the hit Beyblade series.
If that sounds like your cup of tea, then you can check us out on Spotify, iTunes, and all good podcast apps.
As always, stay safe,
Stay awesome, and most importantly,
Stay hydrated.